this video, we'll be showing you how to use global variables with the API testing platform by Sauce Labs. In order to follow along, you should already have a basic API test using a GET call for this public endpoint. You can find the instructions and follow along to create this at training.saucelabs.com in the API testing course under Module 3. You can access the API testing platform by going to app.saucelabs.com/API testing. You should have your own project and tests set up already in order to follow along. What we're going to do is split up the main GET call with the URL right here into 3 basic sections. There are 3 basic parts to any URL. You have the protocol, you have the domain, or the main website URL for where this is hosted, as well as the specific endpoint. What you're going to do is add in global variables under the Input tab for each part of this URL. Go to the Input tab and add a global parameter. The first thing we're going to do is add in the domain. And for this URL, we'll want to pull in the value of api.uswest1.saucelabs.com. Now we'll add in global parameters for the protocol and the endpoint. Protocol will be the commonly used HTTPS, and the endpoint will be the endpoint where you can retrieve and download versions of the Sauce Connect proxy tunnel software. Once you have all 3 of your variables created, hit save. Now we need to go into our code and update it with these variables. We created the domain first, so let's add that one in first. We'll go in between the slashes. To add in a variable, you use the get symbol and curly brackets and type in the domain. Let's test this out before we add in the other variables. You should have a successful test when you run it. Now we can add in the protocol and endpoint variables. Since we included all the slashes in the variables, we won't need to add them here in the URL. Now save and run your test to make sure all 3 of these variables were created and used correctly. When you create tests with multiple HTTP calls that might be calling the same protocol and domain over and over again, using variables makes it a lot easier to do something like switch between a staging and production server. In the next video, we'll show you how to create code snippets and how to store variables and snippets so you can use it across different projects.